Welcome to the Non-Musician's Primer to Digital Music Composition, Lesson 1. If you haven't already, you should go ahead and download the latest version of Reaper, get that installed, up and running, and you should see a screen very similar to this one. To start it off, rather than worry about all the buttons on the screen, we're just going to focus on these two areas here. This is your track list, and this is your timeline. Go ahead and right-click here in the track list, and we'll just dive right in by inserting a virtual instrument on a new track. This will prompt you to select an instrument, so go ahead and pick Resynth here, which is one of the included synthesizer plugins in Reaper. Hit OK, and you'll see the configuration window for the synthesizer you just added. This can be really intimidating at first, so we'll just drag Square Mix up to 1.0 and close the window. What that does is it makes it a square wave synthesizer, which is one of a few possible types of basic tones. We'll get more into that later. For now, what's important is that you just configured a synthesizer, and it's ready to play some notes. So, go to your timeline, hold Control, and click and drag from 1 to 5, and that'll make a new MIDI clip. Control, click and drag is the basic mechanism for making MIDI clips. And you'll be doing that a lot. Once you have your MIDI clip, double-click on it, and that will open up the editor, which is where you'll be spending a lot of time here in Reaper. Across the top you have time, from the start to the end of your MIDI clip, and on the left you have pitch, with low being low and high being high. If you mouse over this and scroll, you can get to higher notes or lower notes as appropriate, and if your mouse is over here and you scroll, you'll zoom in and out, centered around wherever this playhead is. To kick things off, rather than getting into the intricacies of scales and chords and such, I'm just going to tell you a scale and tell you some chords. We're going to be using A minor, which is an easy scale to remember because it only has the white keys from A all the way up to A. So follow along here as I draw this out. And voila, this is an A minor scale. You can hit space or click this play button to hear the clip. And when you pick a scale, you only use notes on that scale. So in this case, we're only using these notes. Just starting out, it can be helpful to leave this sequence at the start of your clip so you can look at it and see, am I using the right notes? Especially as you're still getting started to learning to read a piano. Don't worry too much if you don't know any note names. That'll come as you practice. If you look up here, it will show you the name of the note you're mousing over, as well as highlighting it here on the piano itself. So you can see I am selected D4, which is note number 62 on the list. That's what that second number means. And the D key is depressed on the piano roll. Alright, enough of that. To get started, we're going to write a very basic chord progression. And generally, chord progressions start on what is called the one chord, which is the chord based on the first note in the scale. In our case, this is A. So drag out a long note from 2 to 3 on A3. Then another one on C4, and another one here on E4. And that is your basic A minor chord. Since that synthesizer is a little loud, I'm going to drag down the volume. You can monitor the volume of your overall project down here in your master levels. If this turns red, that means it's too loud. You can clear that by clicking it. Now it's a much more reasonable volume. We'll get more into mixing volume levels later, so don't worry too much about that for now. You've got an A minor chord, and the cool thing about chords is they're based on intervals. So this is a minor chord, wherever it goes. If I drag it down to F, it's an F minor. I can drag it up to D, it's a D minor. Drag it back down to A, it's an A minor. For the second chord, we're going to make an F chord. Now, if you want the spacing to stay the same, you could just copy this chord and drag it down. However, you will notice that puts this note here off the scale. This is G sharp, or equivalently up here. G sharp is not in the A minor scale. So what this means is we need to actually use an F major chord. Basically, you want to keep chord notes on the scale. That's what determines whether a chord is major or minor. Or that's what determines whether you use a major or minor chord, is where the notes fall. Our next chord is going to be G. And again, A sharp would be a minor chord. That's not in our scale, so we're going to use B for a major chord, and then D. Now, you may have noticed we've run out of space in our MIDI clip. To extend it, click and drag on the right edge, and draw it out one more measure so you see 5. By default, this loops the MIDI clip. So do you want to drag this out to the end as well? And that will give us one more measure to play with. For our final chord, we're going to use E, G, and B. Now we have a chord progression. Pretty simple, right? I'm going to go ahead and remove the first part of this clip. One way to do that is to just drag it forward like that. I'll undo that. Another way is to move my playhead where I want to make a cut and press S on my keyboard. That'll split the clip, so now I can just select this and delete it. Either one works. The splitting method is good for removing things in the middle of the clip, like if I wanted to get rid of this chord, I could split here and here, like so. I will undo that and move this to the start. Now, this chord progression will loop very smoothly. If you press this button here, we're going to go ahead and go outside these two areas really quickly. This is the loop button, and this will cause your project to loop when you get to the end. Okay, there you go. It's not the best chord progression, certainly, but it will do. So we'll go ahead and copy that and put it in there twice. That'll give us 8 measures of music, or as you can see from this time code here, that's 16 seconds at the current tempo, which is 120 beats per minute. That's the default tempo. Leave that as it is for now. Easy enough to mess with later. Next, we're going to want to add another instrument, which is going to play on top of this. That'll be our melody. So go to right-click, Insert Virtual Instrument on New Track, and select Resynth again. This time, we're going to drag up Sawtooth Mix to 1.0, so it'll have a different texture and sound distinctive. Once again, Control, click and drag, this time from 1 to 9, and you'll notice that it copied this clip because I had it selected. If you draw a new MIDI clip, by default, Reaper will copy whatever you have selected. So if you want to make a new clip, first deselect everything, and then click and drag. That can be really confusing at first, but as you get familiar with the program, it's a very quick way to copy and paste. Especially if you just want parts of something, because it copies it from the point you have selected. Mostly you just need to know that you should deselect everything before drawing new MIDI clips. Anyway, now you have an 8-measure MIDI clip, so go ahead, double-click, and open that up. Right away you'll notice that this synth sounds very different from our previous one. Now, as a general rule, melodies are higher pitched than chords or bass lines or pretty much anything else. So we're going to go ahead and scroll up to A5 to start our melody. And writing a melody, for the most part, is about using the notes that are in the chord that's playing. So let's open up this chord clip and shrink it down a little bit here. drag it mostly off the screen just for reference, and bring up the MIDI clip. Okay. Now one cool thing Reaper does is it synchronizes your playhead. So if I go to the start of the second measure here in this clip, it moves here in this clip. So I can see, you know, if I'm at this part of the melody, that's at this part of the chords. Makes it much easier to write parts that complement each other. Let's go back to the beginning and start with, okay, so A minor is this first chord, which is these three notes, A, C, E. So a very basic melody would be that, but quickly. A, C, E, back to C, and then copy and paste this twice. This synthesizer is likewise a little bit loud. I'm going to turn it down to -4-ish. And then we can, and as you can see, that sounds pretty fine. One thing we can do is copy this, drag this down to F. Remember that this middle note needs to be moved up one step, so it's still in the scale. G, again, adjust the middle notes. And E, which does not require the middle note to be adjusted. The only difference between a major and a minor chord is this middle note. It's one step higher in a major chord. Now that we have that set up, we can listen to it. You can also press Home to go to the start of a clip or your project. Alright, that's a melody and chords, and they go pretty well together. We'll add one more part before we wrap up this first lesson, and that's the bass line. So insert another virtual instrument, add a third copy of ReSynth, and drag up the triangle mix to 1.0. Close the window, deselect everything, and drag out a new MIDI clip. Open this up, and if need be, reopen your chords. And we're just going to do a very simple repeating bass line. The simplest bass lines usually repeat the first note, also known as the root note, of the current chord. So in this case, that's A, and again, and bass lines are usually low notes, obviously, so we're going to scroll down to A1. That's too low. Make it A2. And we're going to drag out this note, copy it, and paste it 4 times. That's a very basic bass line sequence. Repeat it on F, G, and E. Copy that, and repeat it, and now you have a bass line. Now that's all well and good, but it's kind of hard to hear if the bass line is sounding the way we want it to. If you click this S here, that will solo the track, which means you only hear it. That's good for, seeing if your bass line is sounding the way you want it to. Because of the way this synthesizer works, we're not actually getting distinct tones between these notes. They're just played as one solid one. So hit Control-A to select everything, and drag them back just like that. That way, we'll get this staccato rhythm, and it sounds like, and it makes the bass line more interesting. It's also very quiet, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to +6-ish. Then we can unsolo the track and listen. Okay, what happened there was I had all my tracks selected, so when I adjusted the volume, they all went up by 6. Now let's listen to it. As you can see, the volume is not turning red, that's a good thing. And it all sounds pretty good. It's a very simple, very basic harmonies, very basic chord progression, and it's definitely the beginnings of a nice song. Alright, that's the end of the first lesson, so before I close, I'll say a few things about this course and music composition in general. For me, and I think a lot of people, you get into this because you can you can think of something in your head. You know, you can imagine a song or part of a song, or maybe even just a sweet guitar lick. Whatever it is, you really want to put that on the page, and it's really frustrating when you start putting down notes and it doesn't sound anything like it. And unfortunately, it's going to be like that for quite a while. So I would encourage you, when you're just starting out, to shy away from that mindset and instead be really curious and see, you know, what can I make? What's going to happen when I sit down to play with this? And really just focus on making something. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Procedural-wise, yeah, after subsequent lessons there will be some sort of homework assignment. I'll want you to make something, send me the project file. I'll offer you feedback, we'll dialogue a bit, whatever. But for now, nothing. So hang tight, relax, move on to the next lesson if it's available and you're ready. And thank you for watching, and have an awesome day, night, or something in between, as appropriate.